Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to the Criterion Collection Review Series, where I'm reviewing every movie in my personal Criterion collection. And today, kind of coincidentally, we're reviewing another courtroom drama, which is considered to be one of the most accurate courtroom dramas even to this day, as far as I'm aware, which is Otto Preminger's 1959 movie, Anatomy of a Murder. Which is number 600 in the collection. We have made it very far, and well, actually, we're not even. Well, I think we're about halfway through, and if we're not halfway through my collection, we're getting there. So I won't be able to finish this by the end of the year, most likely, but we're getting there. We're on our way. So Anatomy of a Murder is another early-ish Criterion I got. I'm pretty sure I got it while I was still in high school. And I got it because I loved the cover. Now, if you couldn't tell, the cover, or at least this image here, was designed by Saul Bass. You can even see his little signature right there. And for those who don't know, Saul Bass is one of the most famous movie title artists of all time. He did the title sequence for Psycho, Vertigo. He did it for a bunch of Otto Preminger's movies. He's just super influential and super fascinating. He's just a really great visual artist. And so that aspect of it really caught my eye. Also the fact that it starred James Stewart, who is just such an incredible actor and so influential and important. I'd see anything he was in. And while I was expecting like a good courtroom drama, what I got was maybe one of the best courtroom dramas I've ever seen, and one that is focused very much on the procedure and the process of a court case. But to get into the plot, the story follows Jimmy Stewart's character, who is this sort of older, middle-aged lawyer living in the upper peninsula of Michigan, in this small town. Everybody knows who he is. There's not a lot going on there. So it turns out while Jimmy Stewart was on a fishing trip, a murder happened where a military lieutenant killed a local bartender who allegedly sexually assaulted the lieutenant's wife. And so now Jimmy Stewart decides to take on the case, believing there might be a way to get the lieutenant off, even if he's not 100% sure that the lieutenant is innocent, or even his wife, who was a very promiscuous woman. And from there, the movie follows in great detail the case, from finding evidence, from going through old court cases and reading legal text, all the way to getting inside the courtroom itself, going through the drawn-out process of presenting witnesses, cross-examinations, and how lawyers can use different tactics to even draw out the proceedings and get the jury on their side. And I think that is where the genius of Anatomy of a Murder is found. So Otto Preminger actually, when he was still living in Hungary, I believe, I might have that totally wrong, but he was living in Europe before he moved to America and became a film director. And he actually went to school to be a lawyer, and I believe actually got his degree and was actually a lawyer. And so going into making this film, he clearly knows what he's doing in terms of representing the legal process. And he finds a way to make it interesting, where just the whole notion of being a lawyer and of trying to present your case and argue it in court is fascinating on its own, even though I would argue that is a aspect of the job that is over dramatized or is ignored outright. But here it is the main focus of the film, where the first 40 minutes is the investigation, the setup, and then the next almost 2 hours of the movie is just the court case. And it's extremely engaging, and a big part of that, it comes from the performances. Jamie Stewart is great, where this was sort of in his period of his career, where he was playing against his type that he had developed in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, It's a Wonderful Life, things like that, leaning away from those fatherly nice, genuine roles and more towards these darker, more complex roles. You would see that in like Vertigo, Rear Window. And in this film, he is a lawyer that does have some morals, but he is someone who holds his cards close to his chest, where he's always trying to get something out of other people. He's sarcastic, he messes around a lot. And in court itself, he is a very performative person, most likely for his own gain, not exactly to be moral or righteous or to truly argue for the morals of a case, but really just to make the court or the jury like him and his stance. But while Jimmy Stewart is killing it, everybody else is as well. There are the two main side characters, which are his paralegal and an old washed-up lawyer that's sort of become the local drunk, who form Jimmy Stewart's legal team. And they add a lot of texture and a lot of intrigue to Jimmy Stewart's own life in the film and his own place within the town. But then all the other actors are really great as well. The actors playing the army lieutenant and his wife are really great. They have this incredible way of giving great performances even in court, but you're never quite sure where the lies begin and the truth stops. They never seem fully trustworthy. It always feels like there's something going on beneath the surface, which really sells this moral ambiguity that runs throughout the entire film. And then also the other lawyer, the other lawyer that is representing the people who are accusing the lieutenant, is played by George C. Scott in one of his earliest roles. And even at this point where he is, he's not even, like, if we look here on the cover, he's not even in the poster, he's one of the last billed people, and he steals the movie at certain points. He is such an incredible actor, even this early on in his career, and really shows why he became such a star later on, or in the next few years after this. And then the townspeople in the film are also really great and feel very real. And, well, that most likely is because they were the actual residents of the town that the film was shot in. Where Anatomy of a Murder is actually based on a real-life murder case that took place in the very town that the movie is shot in. And Otto Preminger does an incredible job of capturing this small town, this local feel where everyone knows everybody. There's always these rumors going around. You can walk everywhere. Everyone lives in these little shacks, or sort of these not necessarily run down, but very rustic feeling places. And it gives the movie a lot of texture, it gives the film a sense of place that really helps to get you invested in what's going on and in Jimmy Stewart's character as well. And I think that dedication to the realism leads into the themes of the film, where there's so much dedication to the legal process, to representing the case as accurately as humanly possible, to accurately presenting how a lawyer does their job. And that's all in service of representing this idea of how justice is represented and defended in court, where a lawyer's job isn't necessarily to do something to be morally right. Their job is to win their case, and they will do it by any means necessary. And so because of that, we never find out what actually happened. There's a lot of speculation. There are a lot of threads that are weaved for us by the lawyers, but then a lot of them don't really go anywhere. And it's a lot, and we're kind of strung along with the jurors. We are a part of this theater that the lawyers are putting on, and that's how court is represented here, almost as like a play or a performance. And that is reflected in the cinematography of the film, which is a lot of wide shots, a lot of long takes. It does remind me of the way that a lot of plays are shot, especially when they're shown in theaters. And again, it is about not necessarily picking a side, not necessarily finding the truth, but it is about convincing someone of your truth. And so when you get to the end of the film, there isn't really a right or a wrong. There is just what has happened. And you as an audience member, along with the jury, decide what you believe. You decide who you believe, what stories you want to believe, where this is all going. And so because the focus so much is on convincing you and the jury of these stories, the lawyers, so mainly James Stewart and George C. Scott's characters, are giving such incredible, passionate performances, yet they can also be really petty and really sharp and like get a lot of digs at each other. Because it is almost like a debate. There is a weird motif or common idea in the film where the Jimmy Stewart and George C. Scott both keep wanting to say, like, this isn't a high school debate, this is a court of law, when they really are taking a lot of jabs at each other and going through a lot of arguments that you would see in a high school or in a high school debate. And I think that does show, in a weird way, the hypocrisy of the system that these people, these lawyers, as their job, have to weave and navigate through. And so it creates a film that is somewhat clinical. It doesn't dramatize a lot. It does sometimes, admittedly, but it manages to find the interest and the intrigue in a courtroom. And I think that helps that the story itself is scandalous. It is an exciting court case, but they try to hold to those standards and to those realities as much as humanly possible. Because these are human stories, these are human events, these are human emotions. And that's what makes courtroom dramas so fascinating and so engaging, is, you know, the moral ambiguities and questions and seeking the truth. These ideas come together, and this film serves to get away from that to a certain extent, but rather than, you know, playing into them, it shows how lawyers play into those desires for narratives, for answers, even if those answers aren't necessarily the truth. But, and I almost forgot to mention this, Jesus, the score is done by Duke Ellington, therefore it's amazing. It's a great jazz soundtrack. It gives the movie this like seedy, noir, detective vibe to it, which I think on the surface may not really fit with what they're going for, but it gives the movie this scandalous, edgy nature to it, which isn't to say that jazz is edgy or sketchy anymore, but at the time it definitely was. It was the music of young people. It was experimental. It was challenging. And that's what Otto Preminger focused on. And so to transition into the special features of the film, the special features really focus not only on the making of the film, interviewing people that were involved in the production, actors, whatever, but a big focus is on Preminger's career and his desire to sensationalize things, to really push the boundaries of what was allowed with the censors at the time. Famously, Anatomy of a Murder was a big controversy because they talked very candidly about sex. And, well, it makes sense because they're in a courtroom. They can't use euphemisms and clever metaphors to talk about rape. They have to actually say the word rape and sperm, and they say bitch, and, you know, all of these different things that at the time were just shocking and mind-blowing. But he managed to get it through and makes a film that feels more realistic and less dated than it would have any other time. And so in that way, the Criterion is great at giving you that history lesson, at sort of explaining to you what the significance of this movie is, not only in terms of it being a realistic drama, but in Otto Preminger's dedication to that realism, that he would go against the censors, especially when most people did not even dread or think about going against the censors. And then, ironically, the Hays Code, I believe it was they got rid of it the year after this movie released. So on the disc, there are a lot of great interviews. There is one particular with a woman that wrote the biography on Saul Bass that discusses his work with Otto Preminger. That's a really great, almost like crash course introduction on Saul Bass and on this point in his career. The most interesting thing here, at least in my opinion, is they have a short documentary called Anatomy of Anatomy, which actually looks into the behind the scenes of the film and specifically talks to the people that lived in the town that the movie was shot in and where the court case was based off of, and gets their sort of opinion on what it was like to get this big Hollywood production, these big Hollywood stars, and the way that Otto Preminger would use them in the film, and all the different production stories that happened to this small town, and you had a lot of people who were like, oh, I was in the production, this is what happened, and visiting locations from the film, and it's really, really fascinating and really shows Otto Preminger's dedication, again, to that realism, to capturing that town's feel and atmosphere. And then we also get the booklet here. We have an essay written by Nick Pinkerton, which goes into not only the film's place within Otto Preminger's career and within the context of the time, even bringing up how this was kind of the heyday of courtroom dramas after it comes out after 12 Angry Men, but before To Kill a Mockingbird. But it also gets into the analysis of the film and talking about sort of the idea that I mentioned earlier of court as theater, where it is a performance and it is a group of people trying to convince you of a certain idea or a certain truth, to almost whisk you away from reality to believe that something is happening. It's a really interesting analysis. And then we also get an excerpt from, I believe it's Life magazine? Yeah, from Life magazine, talking about the actor that plays the judge in the film, whose name is, the actor's name is Joe Welch, who most famously was involved in, I believe he was a counsel to the U.S. Army when they were being prosecuted during the McCarthy communism trials. And so he sort of became a celebrity out of that, and then played the judge in this film, even though he was more of a lawyer in real life, but whatever. And it just gives an interesting look at the way Joe Welch was perceived in his own correspondence between people. Very interesting, like, nice little tidbit, you know? And so, in that sense, I would say Anatomy of a Murder is not only a really great film, especially if you are into courtroom dramas or you are a lawyer and you want to see a movie that actually represents the process correctly. It's a really great film to view on that level, but then it's also just a really great release that gives you so much great behind-the-scenes material about the film of every little detail, and is, you know, sort of a good lesson on Otto Preminger and on sort of this film's attempt at capturing realism. Either way, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you want more people to see it, please share it. And if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe. Where next time we're actually going to be looking at a kind of a lighter film sometimes, which is the British romantic comedy Harold and Maude. But thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.